You are listening to Housekeepers Chat by the United States Department of Agriculture from 1927. Disclaimer: this is read from a historic archive document. Do not assume content reflects current scientific knowledge, policies, or practices. This broadcast was aired on the 3rd of March, 1927.
More advice on how to save time and steps in the kitchen in today's program. Also, a recipe from the United States Bureau of Home Economics.
Yesterday morning, while I was sewing up the buttonholes in a wool sweater of Billy's so they wouldn't stretch when I washed it, my next-door neighbor ran over to get my recipe for spice cake. "Sit down," I said, "and tell me why you were doing so much hammering at your house last night."
"Hammering?"
said my next-door neighbor.
"That wasn't I. That was my husband. He is making me a wheeled tray."
"Very nice," said I, "but I thought your husband didn't like to make useful things for the house."
"He doesn't,"
said my neighbor cheerfully.
"but he is very fond of home cooking. I told him if he didn't make me a wheeled tray, he might just as well stay downtown and eat dinner at the Stumble Inn. Bring me the hammer and the nails," said he, with a sigh. "Where is the man who has the power and skill to stem the torrent of a woman's will? For if she will, you may depend on it, and if she won't, so there's an end on it. I was so pleased with him,"
concluded my neighbor,
"that I'm going to bake him a spice cake for dinner. He simply adores spice cake."
"Don't be effusive," I said, taking down the measurements of the sweater so I could stretch it to its original size after it was washed. "Tell me why you suddenly felt the need of a serving tray when you have done without it all these years."
"All these years,"
repeated my next-door neighbor.
"Therein lies the tragedy of my life. All these years I have been wasting half an hour each meal, an hour and a half a day, and 3 weeks a year, washing my dishes. You know I keep my china in the dining room. After each meal, I carry the dishes from the dining room, 2 or 3 pieces at a time, and stack them in the kitchen, wherever there's room to stack. Then, when they're washed and dried, I carry the dishes back to the dining room. Again, such a waste of steps. With a wheeled tray, I can bring all the dishes from the dining room at the same time. I will clean them and stack them on the right side of the sink in an orderly way. I will place my dishpan in the sink and wash the dishes. I will stack them on the left side of the sink. Then, when they're dried, I will place them on the wheeled tray and trundle all of them back to the dining room at the same time. And I save,"
she concluded,
"more than 3 weeks a year."
"That's fine," I said, washing Billy's sweater in a lukewarm suds. "There seems to be a universal interest in saving steps in the kitchen this season. The interest in kitchens would almost warrant a National Kitchen Week."
"Why not?"
asked my neighbor enthusiastically.
"Why don't you start something like a National Kitchen Week? Better kitchens make happy housewives. You might sponsor a nationwide Back to the Kitchen movement and get your picture in the paper."
"Don't be silly," I said. "The idea is not to get women back to the kitchen, but to arrange the kitchen so that we can have time to spend out of it." Our newly awakened interest in well-planned kitchens doesn't mean that we want to shirk our duties. Most of us realize that convenience counts more in the kitchen than in any other room in the house. The kitchen is our workroom. In most families, at least 1,000 meals are cooked during the year. Surely, for any job that comes as often as getting 3 meals a day, every step-saving, time-saving arrangement possible should be included in the plan and the equipment."
"Of course,"
said my neighbor.
"everybody knows that. But what do you consider the most important points that make for convenience in a kitchen?"
"Well," said I, rinsing the sweater in several changes of lukewarm water, "first, last, and in between times, when you are planning and equipping a kitchen, think about the work to be done in it. Don't make the room too big. A large, spacious kitchen is paid for in miles of steps. Make the kitchen oblong so there will be no more floor space than is actually needed." Study the relation of the kitchen to the rest of the house. Make a direct connection from kitchen to dining room in the common wall between them. See to it that there is easy access to front and back doors, to the telephone, to the stairs, and to the second floor. Arrange for adequate ventilation in all weathers and for good lighting at all work centers, at night as well as during the day. Screen the windows and doors against household pests. Flies especially are a menace to health. Choose finishes for the floor, the walls, and the woodwork that are durable, suitable in color, and easy to keep clean. Select furnishings that fit the wall and floor space and will pay for themselves in usefulness. Weigh the pros and cons of built-in or movable pieces and compare prices carefully. Make sure that there is an abundant supply of hot and cold running water and a sanitary drainage system. Decide on the most comfortable height of working surfaces. Group all equipment, large and small, into compact work centers for preparation of raw food, cooking, serving, clearing away and dishwashing, and any other activities done regularly and often in the kitchen. Arrange these groups from left to right, following the order in which the various jobs are done. Remember that the kitchen is above all else a place to prepare and serve food. Limit the kitchen to this use, if possible, and arrange for laundering and such work to be done in another place. At this point, my neighbor interrupted me.
Why don't you practice what you preach, Aunt Sammy? You advise doing the laundry in some place other than the kitchen, but you have just finished washing Billy's sweater in the kitchen.
Certainly, said I. You wouldn't expect me to leave the kitchen when I have a guest. Wait just a minute now till I finish this sweater, and I'll tell you my recipe for spice cake. I spread the sweater, back down with sleeves outstretched, on several thicknesses of clean, soft material laid flat. Then I measured the sweater, shaped it according to the dimensions taken before I washed it, and pinned it in places where it was inclined to shrink.
Neatly done,
commented my neighbor.
Now please give me a recipe for spice cake that will prove to my husband that I appreciate his work on the wheeled tray. I want a spice cake with coffee in it and at least 3 different spices.
Your request will be granted, I said. Here is the recipe, one which I got last week from the Bureau of Home Economics. It's been tasted and tested and pronounced good. The recipe calls for 11 ingredients, so you'll have to give me your full and undivided attention while I give it to you. This is the recipe for spice cake that I gave my neighbor. 11 ingredients. 1½ cups sugar, 3/4 cup butter, 3 eggs, 3 cups flour, 3/4 cup coffee, 3 teaspoons baking powder, 1 teaspoon salt, 1½ teaspoon cinnamon, 1/2 teaspoon nutmeg, 1/4 teaspoon cloves, 1 teaspoon vanilla. 11 ingredients. Check them, please. 1½ cups sugar, 3/4 cup butter, 3 eggs, 3 cups flour, 3/4 cup coffee, 3 teaspoons baking powder, 1 teaspoon salt, 1½ teaspoon cinnamon, 1/2 teaspoon nutmeg, 1/4 teaspoon cloves, 1 teaspoon vanilla. Cream the butter and sugar, add the eggs, one at a time, and beat well. Mix and sift the dry ingredients. Add them to the liquid mixture. Add the vanilla. Bake either in a loaf or in layers. Ice with vanilla frosting. I have broadcast twice the recipe for vanilla frosting. If you failed to hear the recipe when it was broadcast, write for a copy of the free radio cookbook, which contains this recipe and a good many others. Tomorrow I shall broadcast a dinner menu, including a pot roast.
This broadcast was researched and produced by BreakAway Empire LLC.